Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira. Let's now get you the latest from around the world this past week. But first, a look at the headlines. Over 80 people killed and several injured after driver rams high-speeding truck into a crowd in France. World leaders denounced the attack. President Hollande extends state of emergency by 3 months. Theresa May takes charge as new Prime Minister of Britain, announces new cabinet, appoints David Davis as Brexit Secretary. Boris Johnson heads the Foreign Affairs Office. China loses claim on South China Sea at UN-backed tribunal. Beijing blames the United States for stirring trouble in the region and rejects the international court's ruling. China vows to protect its sovereignty. Coalition government reduced to a minority in Nepali parliament after Maoists withdraw support. No confidence motion to be brought against Oli government. Political crisis deepens as Prime Minister refuses to quit. Our top focus on the program this week: Theresa May became Britain's new Prime Minister on Wednesday, promising to carve out a bold new future in the world. She embarks on the monumental task of leading the country out of the European Union. The UK Prime Minister wasted no time and swiftly appointed key ministers in her cabinet.
Conservative Party leader Theresa May replaced David Cameron as Britain's Prime Minister on Wednesday. Speaking outside 10 Downing Street after being appointed by the Queen, she said it would be her mission to build a better Britain. She assumed office to take on the monumental task of leading the country out of the European Union.
Following the referendum, we face a time of great national change. And I know, because we're Great Britain, that we will rise to the challenge. As we leave the European Union, we will forge a bold, new, positive role for ourselves in the world. And we will make Britain a country that works not for a privileged few, but for every one of us.
May wasted no time getting to work and appointed key members of her cabinet soon after taking charge. While former London Mayor Boris Johnson was appointed Foreign Secretary, his predecessor Philip Hammond was given the charge of Finance Minister. David Davis has been appointed to the new cabinet position of Brexit Secretary. He will be leading the country's negotiations for exiting the European Union. May appointed former Energy Secretary Amber Rudd to take on her former role of Home Secretary.
This is a people's movement. It doesn't need stars. All you guys who specialise in politics, you're just about general elections, one versus another. This is about the victory of an idea. And that star is here tonight.
But I completely agree with her sentiments and about opportunity, about giving people better life chances. And clearly now we have a massive opportunity in this country to make a great success of our new relationship with Europe and with the world. And I'm very excited to be asked to play a part in that.
While Scotland still wants to remain a part of the EU, it hopes for a positive relationship with the new government.
I'm sure she'll be determined to implement her mandate and protect the things that she thinks are important, and I'll be doing likewise for Scotland, but I hope it can be a positive relationship.
The United Kingdom chose to exit the European Union after a majority of British voters chose leave over remain in the country's EU referendum on 23rd June. David Cameron quit following the referendum. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, joining me for a chat to talk about this is Professor Gulshan, Sachdeva, Centre for European Studies, JNU. Thank you so much, Professor, for being part of the program. Were you surprised, with Theresa May's cabinet reshuffle? In fact, several old heads have rolled, and also, Boris Johnson being appointed as the Foreign Secretary has seen a lot of media coverage in the UK and some negative ones at it.
Well, a couple of things were expected because, as one can see, just before this referendum, Conservative Party was sharply divided. So there was no position on Brexit, as we know. So obviously, her first major task was to form a government and also balance different factions within the party. So what one can see now, and also consolidate her own position now, because she wasn't really expected to be the Prime Minister of UK. So now you have a couple of ministers, those who are actually very pro-Brexit. So they have been given more or less the charge to take country out of the European Union. At the same time, a couple of other people, those she could trust, and basically given important positions like Home Secretary or Treasury Secretary. So it means one can see that she's trying to consolidate her position within the party and also keeping the country together. So in a sense, she has come out, as it seems at the moment, somehow a consolidating figure within the party, the way the party was divided. And it seems she's quite successful at the moment in that particular task.
She's taken over the reins at a very difficult time because, just after Brexit, David Cameron stepped down. She, like you yourself said, she was not expected to be the next Prime Minister, but now she is the Prime Minister of UK. So what are the challenges do you see that she has to go through?
Well, one major challenge, of course, was to keep the country together and form the government, which I think she has done. Now, obviously, the second big challenge she has is taking the country out of the European Union. That's why actually she is there. Now for that's really going to be a long period. So at the moment what she has said so far that she's not going to trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty,
yes.
Which will basically start the whole process. She's trying to consolidate within the country herself, at the same time keeping other partners, other parts of the country together, and then that's going to be the major challenge, because it's not just coming out of the European Union, because European Union also has about so many other trading agreements with so many other countries which come together, roughly about 50 countries.
Yes.
So that will also affect all of them. So she's trying to prepare herself and her government for that particular task. The second, obviously, the challenge is preparing country for Brexit, and the third major challenge for her would be, I would think, keeping the country together. In fact, the first major visit she had to Scotland. So, immediately after this, there was also talk of another Scottish referendum, and she
yes.
had talks with the, First Minister in Edinburgh. So it means, and of course, there is also certain noises within the Northern Ireland as well. So it means from Brexit, then you also have to go, keeping this country together, another major task. Beyond that, the way there is uncertainty for the next 2 years, already the stock market was down, pound is down, and there is all kind of this uncertain period. So you have to keep the kind of economy, going. And of course, the last major task, she also has to keep preparing herself as well as for Conservative Party for the next election. Although the next elections are in 2020, but
yes.
the way things are changing in Britain, you don't know. It may be, preponed sooner. But at the moment, because what one can see, even the Labour Party is in a bad shape. There is a leadership challenge within the Labour Party. At the same time, within the UK Independence Party, there is also, because Mr. Nigel Farage has now resigned, so there is also kind of vacuum. So you don't know the way things are happening, the way the politics is changing within the UK. You also might be preparing yourself for the next election as well.
Indeed.
So these are the kind of challenges in which she is facing.
Challenges abound. You have Scotland on one hand, you have the European leaders who are asking Britain to exit as soon as possible. And Theresa May is someone who likes to be in control, and she is in control now. But do you see that being a problem, or do you see that being an asset?
Well, I mean, you have to be in control if you have to run this government. At the same time, this difficult time. But I think the major challenge will come because, first task of consolidating within the country, that's more or less, I think she has performed pretty well. But now how she is going to negotiate with the European Union, that's the major task.
Indeed.
And if one can see her record, because we really don't know much actually how she is going to deal with the European Union. As a Home Secretary, she was quite tough on immigration, because if you are actually going to have some kind of trade agreement looking, or particularly the kind of free trade agreement you are expecting with the European Union, within the European Economic Area or the country like Switzerland or Norway, then you also have to agree to free mobility of labor, which perhaps would contradict with her earlier position, but one has to see that's going to be the major challenge.
Indeed, challenges abound like we discussed. Thank you so much, Professor, for being a part of the program and putting things into perspective for us. Well, moving on to our other big international focus now. A defiant China has blamed the United States for fomenting trouble in the South China Sea after an international tribunal rejected its total claim over the region. Beijing maintains that it will not abide by the verdict and called it a farce. The UN and other countries urged calm to resolve the dispute in the South China Sea. Here's more.
An international tribunal on Tuesday ruled against China in a bitter row over territorial claims to the South China Sea that is likely to ratchet up regional tensions. In a statement, the court said there was no legal basis for China to claim historical rights to resources within the sea areas falling within the 9-dash line. Beijing has repeatedly violated international law by causing severe harm to the coral reef environment and by failing to prevent Chinese fishermen from harvesting endangered sea turtles and other species on a substantial scale. China, which boycotted the case, has long said the court has no jurisdiction over the matter and will not abide by the judgment. It called it a farce.
I should say the so-called arbitral tribunal was based on the illegal action and claim of the Philippines from the very onset. Its very existence is not legitimate, then all the awards it is to produce will be in vain and invalid.
Chinese President Xi Jinping, who met the European Council President Donald Tusk and European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker in Beijing, saying that the verdict won't affect China's territorial sovereignty and maritime rights and interests over the South China Sea. Beijing directing its ire against the United States, accusing Washington and its Asia-Pacific pivot policy for stirring trouble to blunt Beijing's rise. The US put itself on a collision course with China, describing the ruling against Beijing as final and legally binding. Washington also saying it sees signs of continued Chinese militarization of South China Sea. The landmark case was seen as an important incident in China's rise as a global power. It's the first time the Chinese government has been summoned before the international justice system. Meanwhile, Philippines has asked those concerned must exercise sobriety and restraint after their court win over Beijing.
Our experts are studying the award with the care and thoroughness that this significant arbitral outcome deserves. In the meantime, we call on those concerned to exercise restraint and sobriety.
The United Nations also urged all parties concerned to avoid actions that fuel tensions.
The Secretary General has consistently called on all parties to resolve their disputes in the South China Sea in a peaceful and amicable manner through dialogue and in conformity with international law, including the UN Charter. It remains important to avoid actions that would provoke or exacerbate those tensions.
India also urged all parties to peacefully resolve the South China Sea dispute.
India supports freedom of navigation and overflight and unimpeded commerce based on the principles of international law, as reflected notably in the UNCLOS. India believes that states should resolve disputes through peaceful means without threat or use of force and exercise self-restraint.
The United States and China regularly conduct military exercises in the area, which is of vital interest to both Beijing and Washington, and have accused each other of provocations as recently as last month. Many in the region are worried that China will react to the decision by accelerating efforts to assert control over the South China Sea. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, it's time for a short break now, but still to come, an attack of horrific proportions on France's National Day shocks the world. France goes into mourning as world leaders denounce the act. That and more on the other side. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Welcome back, you're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, a day of celebration turned into tragedy when a truck struck a crowd after Bastille Day celebrations in the southern French city of Nice, killing at least 80 people, including children, and injuring dozens. It happened on the famous Promenade des Anglais after a firework display on France's National Day. The driver, a Frenchman of Tunisian descent, was shot dead and guns and grenades were found inside the lorry. President Francois Hollande denounced the attack and extended a state of emergency across France by 3 months. Over 80 people were killed and dozens injured after an attacker drove a truck at high speed into a crowd watching Bastille Day fireworks in the French Riviera city of Nice late on Thursday.
The casualties of this tragedy are huge. Over 80 people are dead, 18 in critical condition, many people are injured. Our thoughts go once again to the families of the victims, with those who are now deeply affected and feel an immense sorrow, but also with all the residents of Nice who tonight were deeply traumatized and plunged into a state of worry.
Police shot and killed the driver who drove the heavy long-distance truck at a high speed for over 100 meters before hitting the mass of spectators. The driver also opened fire on the crowd. Weapons and grenades were found inside the truck after he was killed.
A lorry arrived and smashed into everyone. There was no security. It took the firemen 25 minutes or half an hour to arrive. It happened on the promenade. Afterwards, there were shots and everything.
French President François Hollande called the attack a criminal act and extended a state of emergency across France by 3 months.
Nothing will make us yield in our will to fight terrorism. We will further strengthen our actions in Iraq and in Syria.
US President Barack Obama issued a statement condemning the attack and pledged US assistance in the investigation. Leaders who had gathered in Mongolia for the 2016 ASEM summit condemned the deadly attack. They stood for a moment of silence in solidarity with France.
Everyone who is here at the ASEM summit is united in the bewilderment about the attack of mass murder in Nice. Words cannot express what connects us with our French friends in these painful hours. This terrible attack happened on their national holiday, a holiday which is a day of pride but has now become a day of great mourning.
A sad day for France, for Europe, for all of us here, also here in Mongolia. And it's a tragic paradox that the subject of the attack were people celebrating liberty, equality and fraternity. We all stand united with the families of the victims, with the French people and their government in the fight against violence and hatred.
The attack comes less than a year after Islamic State militants killed 130 people in Paris. France has been on high alert since the incident in November last year. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television. Well, let's now shift focus to Nepal, where the Himalayan country was thrown into a political crisis again after the main Maoist party withdrew its support from the ruling coalition and called for the formation of a new government. The political crisis deepened with Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli refusing to step down. Oli has instead challenged the opposition for a no-confidence motion in Parliament. Here's a report.
Nepal's former Maoist rebels joined forces with the largest opposition party to lodge a motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister. But the impoverished Himalayan country's increasingly isolated leader vowed to fight on.
I have received a letter from Maoists regarding their decision to withdraw support. We are seized of the matter.
Nepal has been plagued by political turmoil for years, and the bid by the Maoist and the Nepali Congress Party to unseat Prime Minister KP Oli and form a new government has ushered in another phase of uncertainty. Oli, who came to power in October, is accused by the one-time insurgents of reneging on promises, and on Tuesday they withdrew their support in parliament for his fragile coalition. A Nepali Congress spokesman confirmed that his party had given the Maoist its backing so a no-confidence motion could be formally registered. The motion will be tabled in Parliament next week before a vote is held.
KP Oli's was the most inefficient government. We don't see any possibility of our alliance joining Oli's government. Therefore, we are supporting the move to oust Oli government.
Deputy Prime Minister and Defence Minister of Nepal, Bhim Rawal, said they will take the next step after discussing with their party and other coalition partners.
The Maoists have breached the 14-point agreement reached while forming the government. We will discuss the new political development with other political parties as well as within our party. We will analyze the situation and will take the next step.
Oli is Nepal's 7th Prime Minister since it abolished its 239-year-old monarchy in 2008. The Maoists abandoned a bid to unseat him in May after they said he had agreed to work for a national consensus and address their concerns. With the Maoist and Congress joining forces, Oli's coalition in the 595-member parliament needs the support of other smaller parties to survive. Analysts said the arithmetic was against Oli, particularly if the motion was tabled in coming days before he had time to convince other parties to back him. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, much else has unfolded around the world this week. Here's a roundup of the other international news of the week in Globe Watch.
Two passenger trains collided head-on Tuesday morning in a rural area of southeastern Italy, killing at least 23 people and injuring more than 50 others. Pictures from the scene in the Puglia region showed both trains were on the same track about 15 kilometers south of the Adriatic Sea. Both trains were traveling between 100 to 110 kilometers per hour. Footage after the crash showed the smashed remains of train cars and a large area of scattered, twisted metal at the impact site. Bernie Sanders finally endorsed presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. The two leaders put aside their differences and joined hands to try and beat Republican Donald Trump in the November 8th US presidential polls. The Vermont senator, who has been a thorn in Clinton's side for over the last year, pledged to support his former rival through Election Day. While acknowledging the two have had disagreements, Sanders said both campaigns found common ground over the past weekend at the Democratic Platform Committee meeting in Orlando, Florida. The Islamic State has confirmed the death of key leader Omar Shishani, who the US said it killed in March. Shishani was reportedly killed in combat in the town of Shirkat, south of Mosul in Iraq. The Pentagon said in March he had died from injuries sustained in a US airstrike in northeastern Syria. Shishani held numerous senior military positions within the group, including Minister of War, and was also said to be a close military advisor to Islamic State leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. The mastermind of the Pakistani Taliban attack on an army school in Peshawar that left over 140 school children dead in 2014 has been killed in a US drone strike in Afghanistan. Officials said Umar Mansoor was killed along with another militant leader, Qari Saifullah, in the drone attack in Afghanistan's Nangarhar province. The massacre in December 2014 left 144 students and staff members dead after 7 gunmen stormed the army public school. The former head of Afghanistan's main intelligence agency released documents which he said showed that Pak intelligence services helped the Taliban and the Haqqani network in 2014 and 2015. Ex-Afghan intelligence chief Rahmatullah Nabil told a group of journalists in Kabul that he had released the documents to provide concrete evidence of Pakistan's collusion with the Taliban and the Haqqani group.
Well, let's now shift gears and bring you up to speed with all the sports news you might have missed this week in our segment Sports Action. After 19 years and 5 championships with the San Antonio Spurs, Tim Duncan announced early this week that he would retire at the age of 40 from the NBA. Duncan was an elite player on an excellent Spurs team for his entire career. The Spurs made the playoffs every year in his tenure, never with a winning percentage lower than .610, and won 5 titles. With Duncan, the finals as most valuable player in 3 of them. He also won the league MVP award twice. Portugal have surged into the 6th spot in the latest FIFA rankings after lifting their maiden European Championship title with a 1-0 win over host France at Stade de France. Didier Deschamps' France climbed up 10 places to the 7th spot despite the defeat. Argentina continued to remain firm at the top of the rankings ahead of 2nd place Belgium and 3rd place Colombia. Meanwhile, world champions Germany are standing 4th in the rankings ahead of double Copa America winners Chile in 5th. Previous Euro champions Spain are at the 8th place, followed by Brazil and Italy. Five-time Grand Slam champion Maria Sharapova will miss the Rio Olympics after her doping appeal verdict was postponed until September by the Court of Arbitration for Sport. She was given a 2-year suspension in June after testing positive for the banned substance meldonium. Sharapova appealed to the CAS, but both the 29-year-old Russian and the International Tennis Federation need more time to prepare their cases. The Rio Olympics start on the 5th of August. Wimbledon champion Andy Murray will miss Britain's Davis Cup quarter-final clash against Serbia. Captain Leon Smith named Kyle Edmund and James Ward as his two singles players for the clash. Murray was instrumental in helping Britain to their first Davis Cup victory in 79 years last November, but it suggested it was unlikely he would feature against Serbia, who are also missing their talisman Novak Djokovic. In the doubles, Andy's brother Jamie, ranked 5th in the world, will partner double specialist Dominic Inglet. Filipino boxing legend Manny Pacquiao has hinted that he may come out of retirement, insisting that he is still physically fit to return to the ring. The 37-year-old boxer turned politician maintained that his top priority was his political career, but expressed that his passion for the sport had not diminished. Earlier, Bob Arum, who has promoted Pacquiao since 2005, stated that the boxer has given his nod to look for a venue as well as an opponent to fight in Las Vegas later this year. And finally, days after NASA's Juno spacecraft went around the orbit of Jupiter, it has sent its first pictures of the biggest planet of our solar system. The image shows Jupiter surrounded by 3 of its 4 moons, while the 4th major satellite, Callisto, is out of view. The picture taken on Sunday when Juno was some 4.3 million kilometers from Jupiter also shows the planet's Great Red Spot, a centuries-old atmospheric storm. I'm going to leave you this week with pictures from Jupiter. See you again next time.